Welcome back to Travel Speak. I'm Clara.
And I'm Leo. Today we're diving into our final episode, Making Connections, Social Phrases, and Cultural Tips.
After covering all the practical sides of travel communication in our previous episodes, we're ending our series with what I think is the most rewarding part of traveling, connecting with people.
Absolutely. All those transportation phrases, food vocabulary, and accommodation terms are essential, but the magic of travel often happens in those unexpected conversations with locals and fellow travelers.
I couldn't agree more. Today we'll cover everything from introductions and making small talk to understanding cultural norms and building genuine connections during your travels.
And I think this is the perfect way to wrap up our series because at the end of the day, travel is really about people and experiences, not just places and things. Let's start with meeting and greeting. First impressions matter everywhere, but how you greet someone can vary significantly across English-speaking cultures.
Definitely. The basics are pretty universal. Hello, hi, nice to meet you. But the level of formality can differ wildly. In the US, for example, people often use first names immediately, even in somewhat formal situations.
That caught me off guard the first time I visited the States. My doctor introduced himself as Bob rather than Dr. Smith, which would never happen back home.
While in the UK or Australia, there might be a bit more initial formality, especially in business contexts. Phrases like, pleased to meet you, or how do you do, are still commonly used in first meetings.
And don't forget about appropriate physical greetings. In most English-speaking countries, a firm handshake is standard in formal situations, but among friends, you might see hugs or cheek kisses depending on the relationship and region.
Cultural awareness is key here. If you're unsure, it's perfectly fine to say, I'm not familiar with the greeting customs here. What's appropriate? Most people appreciate the effort to respect their cultural norms.
That's such good advice. And remember that introductions often include a bit of information about yourself. Phrases like, I'm from Country City, or I'm visiting for time period, or I'm here for purpose, help establish context for your conversation.
I found that mentioning something positive about the place I'm visiting is a great way to start building rapport. Something simple like, I'm loving the architecture here, or the food has been amazing so far, usually gets an enthusiastic response. Once you've made those initial introductions, the next step is making small talk, which can be intimidating even in your native language.
So true. The good news is that there are some universal, safe conversation topics that work well across most English-speaking cultures. Weather is the classic one. Beautiful day, isn't it? Or I wasn't expecting it to be so rainy this time of year.
Local attractions are another great topic. Questions like, what would you recommend seeing while I'm here? Or is there a local spot that tourists usually miss? Not only keep the conversation going, but might lead to great travel tips.
Food is another winner. What's a local dish I should try? Or can you recommend a good place for coffee? People usually love sharing their local cuisine recommendations.
And don't forget to be prepared for questions about your home country. People will often ask, what's it like in your country? Or how does this compare to where you're from? Having thoughtful responses ready shows you're engaged in the exchange.
I had this wonderful conversation with a taxi driver in Dublin who asked me about seasonal weather in my hometown. What started as simple small talk turned into a fascinating discussion about how climate affects cultural practices. We ended up exchanging contact information, and I met his family for dinner later that week.
Those unexpected connections are what make travel so magical. I think the key to good small talk is showing genuine interest. Instead of just waiting for your turn to speak, really listen and ask follow-up questions like, that's interesting, why is that? Or what do you think about that?
Absolutely. And small talk works best when it flows naturally from topic to topic. You might start with the weather, move to local seasons, then to outdoor activities, and suddenly you're having a real conversation about life in that region. Next, let's talk about cultural sensitivity, because nothing kills a budding friendship faster than an unintentional cultural faux pas.
This is so important. Even among English-speaking countries, there can be significant cultural differences. Having phrases that show respect for local customs is essential. I'm not familiar with the protocol here, or is this the appropriate way to show your willingness to adapt?
And if you're unsure about something, it's always better to ask. Questions like, is it customary to tip here? Or is it acceptable to take photos in this place? Or should I remove my shoes before entering? Demonstrate your respect for local norms.
Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we make cultural missteps. Having a sincere apology ready is important. I apologize for my mistake. I'm still learning about your customs, or I didn't realize that was inappropriate. Thank you for letting me know.
I learned this the hard way in Scotland when I referred to someone as English rather than Scottish. The gentleman corrected me with good humor, but I was mortified. My immediate apology and explanation that I was still learning about the distinctions went a long way towards smoothing things over.
Oh no, but your positive response turned it into a learning moment rather than an offense. Expressing appreciation for cultural differences can also build bridges. I love how people here value something you've observed, or it's fascinating how different this is from what I'm used to.
Absolutely. And remember that cultural sensitivity includes being aware of potentially sensitive topics. Politics, religion, and historical conflicts can be conversational landmines in many places, especially with people you've just met.
Good point. If a conversation veers towards sensitive territory, having a polite pivot ready is useful. That's an interesting perspective. By the way, I've been meaning to ask about. Followed by a more neutral topic can help maintain a pleasant interaction. Let's move on to social invitations, because connecting with locals often leads to opportunities to experience authentic cultural activities.
This is where travel gets really special. For accepting invitations, enthusiastic phrases like, "I'd love to, thank you for inviting me," or "That sounds wonderful, I'm definitely interested," show your appreciation for the offer.
And if you need to decline, it's important to do so graciously. Thank you so much for the invitation, but unfortunately I already have plans, or that's so kind of you, but I won't be able to make it, followed by genuine regret maintains the positive connection.
When making plans with new acquaintances, clarity is key. Shall we meet at 7 p.m. outside the museum? Or would it be better to meet there, or should I come to your neighborhood? Confirming details prevents misunderstandings.
It's also helpful to understand the difference between formal and informal invitations. If someone says, we should get coffee sometime, that might be a casual suggestion rather than a concrete plan, while would you like to join us for dinner on Thursday is a specific invitation requiring a specific response.
Cultural expectations around timing can vary too. In some places, arriving 15 minutes late to a social gathering is perfectly acceptable, while in others, punctuality is highly valued. When in doubt, ask, "What time should I actually arrive?" And your host might give you the real scoop.
And expressing gratitude for hospitality is universal but can take different forms. Phrases like, "Thank you so much for your hospitality," or "I've had a wonderful time," are always appropriate. In many cultures, a small gift for your host is also appreciated.
I'll never forget being invited to a backyard barbecue in Australia after chatting with a local at a cafe. I brought a bottle of wine, which was well received, but what really delighted my hosts was my interest in learning their family's secret marinade recipe. My genuine curiosity and appreciation created a connection that outlasted my trip. In today's connected world, maintaining relationships across distances has become easier, so let's talk about digital connection.
This is how those wonderful travel connections can become lasting friendships. Phrases for exchanging contact information include, "Could we connect on social media?" Or "Would you mind if I add you on WhatsApp?" Or the straightforward, "Can we exchange contact information?"
Social media vocabulary is pretty universal these days, but it's good to be specific. Are you on Instagram/Facebook/LinkedIn? Or what's your handle/username? Makes it clear exactly how you'd like to connect.
Following up after meeting is a thoughtful gesture. "It was great meeting you yesterday," or "I really enjoyed our conversation about specific topic," shows that the interaction was meaningful to you and opens the door for continued communication.
And maintaining connections across distances can be as simple as occasional check-ins. How are things going in their city? Or I just saw an article about something relevant to their interests, and thought of you keeps the relationship alive without being intrusive.
I've maintained friendships with people I've met while traveling for years through little exchanges like these. There's a shopkeeper in Edinburgh who sends me photos of new wool shipments because she remembers how much I loved her hand-dyed yarns. Those little touch points are so special.
Those ongoing connections can also enrich future travels. I once mentioned to an Australian friend from a previous trip that I was planning to visit Perth, and they introduced me to their cousin who lived there. That connection gave me a completely different experience of the city than I would have had on my own.
Exactly. The digital age has made it so much easier to build on those initial travel connections. And there's something wonderful about having friends around the world who can offer local perspectives on global events or just share the little moments of their daily lives with you. Our final segment is expressing gratitude and farewell, because ending relationships well, even temporary ones, is just as important as beginning them well.
Absolutely. Meaningful thank you phrases go beyond a simple thanks. Expressions like, I can't thank you enough for your hospitality, or your kindness has made such a difference to my trip, or I'll always remember our time together convey sincere appreciation.
Gift giving customs vary widely, but a small token from your home country is often appreciated. You might say, "This is a specialty from my region," or "I thought you might enjoy this," as a small thank you when presenting it.
When saying goodbye, the level of warmth depends on the relationship you've developed. It was nice meeting you works for casual encounters, while I've truly enjoyed getting to know you, or I hope our paths cross again, reflects a deeper connection.
And if you genuinely want to maintain contact, be specific. "I'd love to stay in touch. Is it okay if I email you occasionally?" Or, "Please let me know if you ever visit my country. I'd be happy to return your hospitality."
I've found that sharing what you've learned or appreciated is a meaningful way to part. You've given me a new perspective on, or I'll take home wonderful memories of, acknowledges the impact of your interaction.
That's lovely, Leo. I remember when I was leaving this wonderful family-run B&B in Ireland, I wrote a note mentioning specific things I'd enjoyed: the homemade brown bread at breakfast, the gardening tips from the owner, the cozy reading nook by the fire. The owner later emailed saying how much that specific acknowledgement meant to them.
Those moments of genuine connection are what make travel so transformative. Even brief encounters can have lasting impact when there's real human connection behind them. Well, Claire, we've reached the end not just of this episode, but of our entire Travel Speak series. We've covered so much ground over these 6 episodes.
We really have, from transportation and navigation in episode 1 to food and dining in episode 2, accommodation in episode 3, shopping and services in episode 4, emergency phrases in episode 5, and now making connections in our final episode. We've provided a comprehensive language toolkit for English-speaking travel.
I think the key takeaway from our entire series is that language isn't just a technical tool, it's the gateway to experiences, connections, and understanding. Every phrase we've shared is really about building bridges between people.
That's beautifully put. Even practical phrases like asking for directions or ordering food are ultimately about human interaction. And when we make the effort to communicate respectfully and clearly, we open ourselves to the true gifts of travel.
Hope our listeners feel more confident now about their ability to navigate English-speaking countries. What would you say is your ultimate travel communication tip, Clara?
That's a big question. I think it comes down to leading with warmth, curiosity, and patience. Language skills are important, but your attitude transcends words. A genuine smile and an obvious effort to connect respectfully will take you further than perfect grammar ever could. What about you?
I completely agree with that. My advice would be to embrace the imperfection of communication across cultures, those awkward moments, misunderstandings, and language mix-ups. They're often the beginning of your best travel stories and most genuine connections. Don't let fear of making mistakes keep you from reaching out.
Absolutely. Some of my most treasured travel memories started with linguistic confusion that ended in shared laughter and friendship. As we wrap up our Travel Speak series, we want to sincerely thank all of our listeners for joining us on this journey through the English phrases that can transform your travel experiences.
We hope these episodes serve as a helpful resource that you can return to before and during your travels. Remember that language learning is an ongoing adventure, much like travel itself.
If you've enjoyed our series, please share it with friends who love traveling or are learning English. Knowledge like this is meant to be passed along to fellow travelers.
We'd love to hear about how you've used these phrases in your own travels or any language adventures you've had along the way. Your experiences might inspire future podcast topics or series.
That's right. While Travel Speak is concluding with this episode, your feedback could help shape potential new series exploring other aspects of language and travel.
Until we meet again on a new audio adventure, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep communicating with an open heart and mind. The world has so much to offer those who reach out across language barriers.
Thank you for being part of our Travel Speak community. Safe travels and wonderful connections to you all.